Clara was grievously wounded and pleading for a miracle, unaware that her savior was bound by blood to her father's murderer. Jedediah Thorne, the infamous cold-blooded Joe, was convinced that old debts could only be settled with life. Yet Rowan Kane, a man who had long fled his haunted past, made a choice that would forever alter their intertwined destinies. Witness the shocking twists in this epic of the American frontier, and see how justice, at long last, claimed its rightful place to unearth the full truth and bear witness to the end of this tale of betrayal and redemption. Stay until the very end. The climax holds a profound lesson that will both stun and enlighten you. Be sure to subscribe and give it a like. The merciless sun, or relentless furnace, scorched the main street of Red Creek, reducing it to a simmering mire of filth. The air was a heavy, suffocating blend of dust, sweat, and manure. The only sign of life in the scorching stillness was a young woman, dragging herself through the muck. Her once pristine dress was now grimy, stained ruin, and blood mixed with mud streamed down her face from a deep gash on her temple. It was Clara. Her expression spoke not just of terror, but of utter despair, as though her spirit had already fled her body. She crawled towards the saloon, the last bastion of hope in this forsaken outpost. "Help me please," she rasped, her voice a fragile whisper. Her hand, outstretched in silent supplication, froze in the air as she saw him. The solitary horseman. He moved with a deliberate, unhurried gait down the wooden boardwalk, his silhouette a dark monument against the shimmering heat. A wide-brimmed hat cast his face in shadow, concealing his eyes. 2 pistols were holstered at his waist. His steps were measured and confident, as though nothing could break his stride. He was her final hope. His name was Rowan Kane, known throughout the territory as a loner, a former gun-for-hire who had sought refuge in Red Creek to outrun his past. He seemed the very embodiment of the untamed West, a figure of quiet strength, laconic and, it was said, honorable. He did not rush to her side. He simply walked, and as Clara watched him approach, a wave of profound solace washed over her. At last, she was safe. Rowan knelt beside her, ignoring the curious crowd that had begun to gather near the saloon. His leather gloves were coated in dust. He meticulously examined the wound on her temple, then met her terror-stricken gaze. "What happened, miss?" His voice was a low rumble, like dry leaves scuttling across the ground. Clara, gasping with both agony and relief, began to recount her ordeal. Her words came in disjointed, tearful bursts. "Bandits, 3 of them. They ambushed our stagecoach, killed my father, took everything. They said they'd come back for me." Her voice trailed off, her eyes fixed on his weapons. "Please save me."
I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone.
"They're still out there. They're hunting me." Rowan nodded without a word. He unclipped his canteen and offered it to her. Clara took a few shaky sips, and her trembling body steadied. She placed her trust in him completely. She was ready to give him anything to survive. Rowan lifted her into his arms, his movements swift and sure. In that moment, cradled in his embrace, she felt an absolute sense of security. Relief consumed her entirely. The world that had moments ago been a place of brutal cruelty now seemed filled with promise. "Don't you worry, miss," Rowan said, his gaze fixed on the distance. "I'll take care of you. No one will touch you again." He strode confidently towards the sheriff's office, intending to place her in the capable hands of the law. Clara pressed her face into his chest, finding a moment of peace for the first time in hours. She was unaware that she was being hunted not by 3 men, but by one, and he was already here. Rowan came to an abrupt halt, his entire body tensed, and he slowly lowered Clara to the ground. She didn't understand what was happening until she heard a low whisper behind her. "You thought you could get away, Kane?" The voice was menacing, its understanding so close that Clara felt the icy kiss of steel at her throat. She froze, her relief instantly shattered by shock. Rowan, her savior, remained motionless, his face betraying neither surprise nor fear. He simply stared into the empty space before him. Standing beside her was Jedediah Thorne, known throughout the territory as Cold-Blooded Joe. He was clad in worn, faded clothes, his left hand gripping a massive hunting knife. It was he who had inflicted the gash on her face. A chilling smirk played on his lips. "I promised to be back, and I always honor my promises, Rowan." Clara felt her heart plummet into her stomach. She slowly turned her head. Behind Rowan, knife in hand, stood her true stalker. Not 3 men, but one. Jedediah Thorne. She looked at Rowan, who slowly, as if with great reluctance, raised his hands. Her shock gave way to profound despair. The cowboy she had believed was her hero was no such thing. He was an accomplice to her killer. "Give her to me, Rowan," Jedediah hissed. "And we can call it even," Clara screamed. Her voice was thick with despair. She realized her rescue was nothing but a cruel illusion, and the man she had trusted was a participant in this twisted game. She lay in the dirt as the hope she had so carefully nurtured crumbled into dust. A new wave of pain washed over her, this time not physical, but soul-crushing. "You're mistaken, Joe," Rowan said. "She isn't a part of our game." There was no hint of fear or menace in his voice, only a chilling resolve. He slowly lowered his hands and drew a pistol, but he was not quick enough. Jedediah shoved him, sending Rowan sprawling in the mud, and Clara cried out, "She's part of the bargain." Jedediah raised the knife, ready to strike. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable, but instead of the final blow, she heard the sound of a gunshot. She opened her eyes to see that Rowan, despite his fall, had managed to fire. The bullet struck Jedediah's shoulder. He shrieked, dropping the knife and clutching his wound. The blade fell beside Clara, and she saw the engraving on it, a crossed-out letter K. Clara looked at Rowan, who was getting to his feet, aiming his pistol at the wounded Jedediah. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Perhaps she wasn't completely lost. Perhaps her savior and her tormentor were bound by a shared past. But he, Rowan, had not become a traitor. He had chosen her. Now she understood that her survival depended on what would transpire between these two men. But who were they to each other? And why would Rowan save her, seemingly breaking some pact with this monster? She was wounded, lying in the dirt. Her father was dead, and she was the sole witness. All she could do was wait for the story to continue. The sharp crack of a pistol shattered the stillness of Red Creek's main street. Jedediah Thorne dropped to his knees, clutching his wounded shoulder. His eyes, burning with animalistic fury, were locked on Rowan Kane, who stood over him, his pistol still smoking. For a moment, the world held its breath. The shock of the event was so profound that no one dared to move. Women gasped, and men instinctively reached for their weapons. In the chaos, only Clara saw that their conflict ran far deeper than a simple gunfight. On the blade of the knife that lay next to her was the engraved letter K, a symbol that could not have belonged to a simple bandit. "You broke the sacred compact, Kane," Jedediah rasped, his face twisted with pain and hatred. "Our bargain, it was forged in blood." Clara felt despair seize her by the throat. She understood that Rowan hadn't simply protected her. He had shattered a profound tie that bound him to this man. Her rescue was not an act of heroism, but an act of betrayal. Her father, her life, her tragedy, all of it turned out to be merely a fragment of someone else's dark, tangled history. Her heart ached, and she felt utterly defenseless again, but this time not against criminals, but against ghosts of the past. "Our deal was null and void when I walked away, Jed," Rowan replied, his voice as cold and hard as steel. He lowered the pistol, but did not holster it. "She was never a part of it." Rowan Kane, with his quiet demeanor and impenetrable gaze, was an enigma to everyone in Red Creek. His past, like a curtain, was hidden from view. But he was, in fact, a member of a feared cabal known as the Branded, a ruthless gang that had left a trail of death in its wake, robbing banks and trains. Their code was simple: blood for blood, life for life, debt for debt. And Jedediah, whom everyone called Cold-Blooded Joe for his ability to kill without a flicker of emotion, was their leader. Today Rowan decided to leave. He paid his dues, his portion of the loot, to secure his freedom. But as it turned out, that was not enough. Jedediah, consumed by vengeance and a twisted sense of justice, believed that Rowan still owed him. He was meant to complete one last task: to find and execute a man named Arthur Blake, Clara's father. Rowan had left to forge a new life. He became a man of principle, renouncing violence. He lived a life of peace, hoping that the past would stay behind him. He even began to help others, that the past, like a patient predator, was always at his heels. Hearing Clara's fragmented story, Rowan realized that Jedediah was here, and he was hunting not only her but him as well. The crowd gathered on the street finally found its voice. Sheriff Jacobs, a corpulent, unhurried man with weary eyes, slowly approached Rowan. "What's happening here, Kane?" His hand was already on his gun. "This is not your concern, Jacobs," Rowan answered sharply, his eyes never leaving Jedediah. "I am the law in this town," the sheriff retorted. "And you just shot a man." Jedediah, breathing heavily, slowly rose to his feet. He's trying to cover up his crime, Sheriff, he said, his voice weak but his words cutting to the core. He killed her father. Joe's words landed like a gunshot. Shock rippled through the crowd, and Clara felt the ground give way beneath her. What? It couldn't be true. Rowan had saved her. But there was a gruesome conviction in Jedediah's words. Don't believe him, she cried, but her voice was too faint. Yes, I killed him, Rowan suddenly said. His voice was so unnervingly calm that Clara flinched. All of her newfound hope collapsed. He paid his price. He was the last of them. It finished with my past. Jedediah smirked, his eyes gleaming with triumph. He killed your father, girl, he said to Clara, and now he's trying to hide it. He's no hero. He's a killer, just like me. Clara felt her heart shatter. She had trusted him. She had been ready to give him her life, and he was the one who had robbed her of her family. Her father died because of him, because of some long-ago bargain. She was trapped again, but this time in a snare of deceit and betrayal. Rowan looked at her, his eyes hollow, and she saw neither compassion nor guilt in them, only a cold, calculating resolve. In that moment, her despair reached its breaking point. But then something unexpected happened. Clara, trembling and terrified, slowly picked up Jedediah's knife. She held it up to show everyone the engraving. He's lying, she whispered. This knife, it belonged to the killer, but I saw there were 3 of them, and I saw that this man, she pointed at Jedediah, was one of them, and he was trying to kill me. Jedediah turned pale. For the first time, fear flashed in his eyes. Rowan quickly seized the moment. He used the crowd's shock and outrage to buy time. She's telling the truth, Sheriff, he said calmly. Jedediah Thor is a murderer, and he's here to finish what he started. The sheriff's gaze darted between Rowan, Jedediah, Clara, and the knife. He had to make a choice. Rowan knew there was no time to lose. He grabbed Clara's hand. Come with me, he said. We don't have time. He pulled out a second pistol, aimed it at Jedediah, but did not fire. He simply brandished it menacingly. If you try to stop us, I won't hesitate, he growled at the crowd. He'll be back. And when he is, he won't spare anyone. Rowan and Clara ran. They fled from Red Creek, from the town that had become their prison. She didn't understand what was happening, but she instinctively felt she had to trust Rowan. She didn't know if he was her father's killer or not, but she knew that he had saved her from Jedediah. She had no other choice. Her last hope rested in him, in this man who seemed both a hero and a villain at the same time. Now they were together, 2 souls against the entire world, and in that faint glimmer of hope, in that seemingly hopeless situation, she understood that she had a chance to survive. Their escape from Red Creek marked the beginning of a new, harsher reality for Clara and Rowan. The dust and heat of the plains gave way to the treacherous rocky canyons and thorny brush. Every rustle in the undergrowth made Clara flinch. She felt like a trapped animal, and Rowan, who led them along desolate trails, seemed remote and distant. His face, weathered and etched with sunlines, was impassive. He hadn't said a word about what had happened, about his connection to Jedediah. But Clara couldn't remain silent. He said you killed my father. Her voice was hoarse. Is that true? Rowan stopped. He didn't turn around, his gaze fixed somewhere far off. No, he answered simply. That my past, it's directly linked to his death. He finally told her everything. He had once been a member of a cabal known as the Branded, and the K symbol was their personal mark. Jedediah, whom everyone called Joe, was their ruthless leader, and Clara's father, Arthur Blake, along with Rowan himself, were his seconds. We found an old Spanish map, Rowan continued, his voice as dry as sand slipping through fingers. It marked the location of the key. It wasn't a physical key, but a riddle that had to be solved to find the gold that an American banker was transporting 20 years ago. My father was a bank accountant. Jedediah believed that he knew the secret. He was obsessed with this treasure. He wanted us to do one last job and then go our separate ways. Rowan had decided to leave before that, abandoning the cabal. He paid for his freedom with his entire share of the loot. But that wasn't enough for Jedediah. He was convinced Rowan had betrayed him, and now, having found Clara and her father, he was determined to finish him off. Your father, Arthur, Rowan said slowly. He knew something he wanted to keep for himself, something that wasn't on the map. He found it and escaped. Jedediah came back for him. He wanted to find what your father had taken, and he believed I knew where it was. Your father was the last piece of the puzzle, and you're Jedediah's last hope. Clara felt her previous despair give way to a new, deeper and more chilling pain. Her father, it turned out, had also been a criminal, and his death, along with her own fate, was a consequence of his choices. The man she had trusted, Rowan, was part of the very same gang as her tormentor. He hadn't pulled the trigger on her father, but he was inextricably linked to him, to the bargain, and to the reason for his death. Her world was collapsing. She was no longer just a victim, she was a pawn in a game she knew nothing about. She glared at Rowan, who was slowly walking on as if nothing had happened. She was ready to hate him, and then she saw him. On a rocky cliff face, like a hawk on its perch, sat Jedediah. His arm was wrapped in a dirty rag, but he looked strong and fresh. He pulled out a rifle and slowly took aim. "Now we're even, Cain," he roared, and Clara realized they were trapped. All hope for salvation vanished. Rowan threw himself to the ground, pulling Clara down with him. A bullet whistled just over their heads. This was no mere pursuit, it was a personal vendetta. Jedediah would not give up. Rowan dragged Clara behind a nearby rock. "There's nowhere to hide," she whispered, her voice full of despair. "He won't kill me until he finds out where the key is," Rowan said, his eyes glinting. "He's convinced I know, but he doesn't just want to kill me. He wants me to suffer. That's why he'll hunt you, to force me to come back. He's using you to find something you don't even know exists. I don't know where the key is." Clara cried. Rowan looked at her, and something she had never seen before appeared in his eyes. Determination. "Now we're in this game together. We'll play by our own rules." He pulled out his old compass, a constant companion. Its arrow pointed northwest, towards the harsh, arid desert. A strange smile appeared on his face. "I know this place. I know where it leads. I know what your father was looking for." It was then, in this moment of profound despair, that Clara found a new hope. Not just to survive, but to discover the whole truth, to understand who her father truly was, what he was seeking, and why he died. Her thirst for the truth was now stronger than her fear. She looked at Rowan. He was a broken man, but there was a strength in him she hadn't noticed before. And they ran on, into the unknown desert, towards their destiny. She was no longer a victim, and he was no longer a mere savior. Now they were allies in the most dangerous of games, and at stake was not only their lives, but the unveiling of the final mystery. Making their way through the rocky labyrinths of the canyons, Clara no longer felt like a mere victim. Having learned the truth about her father and about Rowan, she was filled with a new, steely resolve. She was no longer a pawn in someone else's game, but a participant who would understand the rules and see it through to the end. Her hope was no longer fragile, it had been forged in the fire of despair. Rowan, walking ahead, seemed not just a guide, but a true ally fighting the ghosts of his own past. He led them along an ancient map store, in his mind a map Jedediah could neither steal nor read. "Here," Rowan said, pointing to a narrow gorge. "Your father left his mark." Inside the gorge, where the shadows were deep and cool, they found an abandoned mine. An old, rusted shovel lay at the entrance. Rowan stopped. "He wasn't looking for gold, Clara," he said softly. "He was looking for something else. Something he believed was more valuable than all the gold in the world." At that moment, Clara realized they weren't alone. A loud voice boomed from above. "You thought I wouldn't find you, Cain." Jedediah stood at the edge of the gorge, his face contorted with fury. A rifle was in his hands. "I knew you'd return here. You always return to your past, Cain. And now you've brought the key right to me." Rowan shoved Clara aside and drew his pistol. But Jedediah was faster. He fired. The bullet struck Rowan's shoulder, sending him tumbling to the ground, his pistol flying. Clara screamed. The pain of what she saw was unbearable. She watched as her last hope faded away. "Did you think you could change?" Jedediah laughed. "You'll always be one of the branded. I am your past, Cain, and you will never escape it." He descended towards them. Rowan lay in the dirt, his wound bleeding freely. Clara, trembling, picked up Rowan's pistol. She was terrified, but there was no despair in her eyes. She knew she had to act. "You don't know where the key is," Rowan said, gasping for breath. "You only ever wanted money. You never understood. I understand that you stole what belongs to me." Jedediah growled. "Where is it, Cain? Where's the key? I'll kill her if you don't tell me." Rowan shook his head. The key had been with him all along, hidden inside his old compass. Jedediah moved closer, raising his rifle. "Where?" "I won't ask again." Clara, filled with rage and a new determination, aimed the pistol at Jedediah. She could not let him kill Rowan. Her finger trembled on the trigger. Jedediah turned to her, his eyes full of contempt. "You think you can stop me, girl?" He took a step, preparing to strike her. But Rowan was swifter. Unexpectedly, he pulled a second pistol from his boot and fired. The bullet hit Jedediah square in the chest. He collapsed, his eyes wide with shock. He had lost. Not because of a lack of strength, but because he could not grasp that Rowan had changed. He was no longer predictable. He was no longer one of the branded. Rowan got to his feet, barely suppressing a gasp of pain. He was consumed, he whispered, looking at Jedediah's body. He thought money would make him happy. Rowan took a crumpled piece of paper from his compass and handed it to Clara. It was not a key to gold. It was a map, drawn in her father's hand, with a single inscription: "The key to freedom is the chance to start over. I chose you, my dear Clara." Her father was not seeking wealth. He was looking for a way to escape from the criminals and begin a new life with his daughter. This was the key, not gold, but the hope for an honest life. Clara felt her heart swell with triumph and inspiration. Rowan had not killed her father, and her father was not just a greedy criminal. He was a man who had tried to do everything to protect her. And Rowan, in the end, had done the same. They both fought to break free from their pasts. Finally, they reached the nearest town, where Rowan went to the sheriff. He told him the entire story, handing over both the map and the pistols. He did not ask for clemency, but for justice. The sheriff listened intently, looked at the wounded man, but did not arrest him. He saw in his eyes not a criminal, but a man who had chosen to atone for his sins by saving an innocent life. Sometimes, Cain, the most valuable treasure isn't what you find, but what you get rid of, the sheriff said. Sometimes, to truly be free, you must first accept your past. A lesson for the audience. The saga of Rowan, Jedediah, and Clara is not merely a tale of the Old West. It is a testament to how our past mistakes can haunt us like ghosts, even as we try to run. Many of us in life face similar branded people or circumstances that prevent us from moving forward. Like Rowan, we must understand that the most crucial battle is the one we fight within ourselves, against the shadow we cast. The greatest victory is not in accumulating wealth, but in finding freedom from our inner demons. The true key to freedom is not an object or a person, but your own decision, your own determination to live an honest life. And that choice is always yours to make, no matter how dark your past may be.